So I heard you played a game of Old World.
I did. I finally played a game. It took a full year from when the news was arriving. Not since the game came out, but since we knew that it was coming. And,
well, talk about that actually for a minute before we get into the actual like
the
gameplay experience, because like I think that's like something that people that do the Warhammer Old World hobby, or the fantasy battles, whatever you want to call it, hobby, that already had armies jumping back. We talked about this a lot. Already had stuff jumping back in, kind of sometimes brush over or don't like really fully address the actual physical labor that's required to get to where you got to. Right?
Yeah. No, that's a thing. Yeah. So I guess my little preamble will be, first of all, the goal of the video isn't to like crap on the game or whatever. It's just purely my like, I don't know. I played a game. This is my thoughts. Yeah. So a couple things. I think when the game was out, I think it's we've made videos about this. It's pretty transparent. We were like a little bearish on it. We didn't really know what was going to happen, so we leaned cautiously. I think we're still sort of cautious about it, even though we have stocked more of it. It's still kind of like, it's not something that I'll continue to be like, oh, it's so safe, I'll just, stock it at huge volumes. And
yeah,
I think it's still something as from a pure business perspective that I will still continue to be like paying close attention to, like how many of this or that, or should we order.
Look,
that?
at the end of the day, like this is where like we say, like the effect of like price memory rots your brain over time. This is the effect of running these types of businesses for a long period of time. Yeah. You don't forget. You just don't forget when a kit like did not sell well, or things didn't sell well for a long period of time. Like that doesn't go away. So like that's where a lot of our like skepticism was in the original thing. It's like I put these kits on my shelf 20 years ago at a hobby shop, and I watched them not sell very well then. So it's you're obviously bringing that forward with you, whether it's healthy or not. That's part of who you are, right?
So I know people are going to be like, get to the game or whatever, but
get to the game.
Essentially, the game comes out as like I would say a pretty good launch day, and then the next 6 months here we kind of like didn't really put much mind to it. I ran some leagues. I continued to run some leagues. I had some people with existing armies, one or two new people, and then this summer we had the Warriors of Chaos come out, and I kind of was like, okay, I think this is a good time to try. Because, like I said, I sold off all my armies like when the store opened.
Yeah,
a big reason for that was because the store was new, and
financial reasons,
I wanted some hobby bucks for myself. So, and I just was like, oh, this is there's a new game coming, etc. So, so I did that, and I set myself the goal of like constructing this Warriors army like relatively quickly. So, between what I already owned, little bits and bobs, I had a couple of the start collectings from whatever it was 5 years ago that came with the like new Pushfoot Warriors and Knights and a guy in a Kakadrak or whatever he's called. I had two of them squirreled away, so it was like perfect. I'll like get these Warriors going and these Knights. And like pretty short turnaround. I don't know, 2 months. I've gotten 2,000 points painted. I'm still adding little fixins now. Like I need like extra flags and banners and characters. But for the purpose of playing, I was going to play like one of my longtime customers, so I knew he wouldn't care if I was missing certain details. And then before that, it was a lot of like digesting the rules and following the YouTubes and trying to figure out like what is actually what is this rule set. And I remember from the beginning, and my opinion hasn't changed, that the game had it really does feel like it's either written or edited or proofread by the Horse Heresy, whoever wrote HH, because it feels identical, like in a lot of ways. The way rules interact and how they're like nested together and reference each other, how crunchy it feels, how certain units rock paper scissors other ones quite well, and it really is. It still continues to be a rule set that is very much like about you got to study the rules. Like you're not going to just play 2 games. You have to play like probably a dozen and memorize a bunch of stuff to really. And that's not new to GW games, but it is heavier than then they're 40Ks in Age of Sigmars for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like AOS, whether we can argue about how complicated it is today, but like it ultimately grew out of a 4-page rule set, right? So the fundamentals of AOS are very basic, like move models around, look at your war scroll sheet, what does it do? Okay, make your attacks. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah. So this will continue to be my argument against the. I know. There's a bunch of old world guys that would just love nothing more than for AOS to just be destroyed, so they can be the only ones left.
Right.
But I think a feature of AOS is that you can get anyone off the street up and playing the game, and most of the spearheads and vanguards and the box kits and the core army kits fielded right away will be effective. Whereas in the old world, it's like if you take a combination of models that without reading everything correctly, you could be in, and depends on who you play, you could be in for a rough time. Like the way the rules need to be, interact. Like I think there's a bit of, and it's tough for me because I have so many. Like I've got like the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, like all those editions like floating around in my head, and you have these notions of like, wait, oh, this was good before, oh, but it's not good now, or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, it is. Yeah. I need to play. I'm going to try and play more. I'm possibly even today. But some things were like pretty much came back right away. Like the I brought some. I was like, well, I need to bring Warhounds and Marauder Cav.
Chaff is still alive and well.
Chaff is still a big part of the game.
Okay, good to hear.
But yeah, you're not in terms of like. Breaking units, like that is a thing that I knew would be tough to get used to, and still tough getting used to, is like units just don't break like they used to. So they've put that in. I guess that's sort of in the game to make new players feel less like they got wiped out. But the problem is, or the caveat, it's not a problem. The caveat though is, if you take the right units with the right stacking of rules, it doesn't matter. So,
interesting.
So.
Are you talking about first charging Pegasus Knights right now?
First charging Cav units stacked with heroes and abilities will blow through most units, unless they have some kind of form of stubborn that they can delay you a little bit. Yeah, there are some power units. I would just classify them as just strictly certain power units. And we've seen this already in the meta. Again, I'm fine. I'm going to get roasted by commenters who play the game a lot.
Sure.
They're going to be like, get good, or
yeah, of course.
This is how you counter that, and things like that. And that's fine. And and I think what always comes back is there's always this argument about I hate this term. People love to play the fantasy games. They always love saying it's so tactical, and I'm like, it's not really tactical. It's more using the rules to a massive advantage. So whatever it is, things like using rules to, like, the way if a unit runs through, how it pops out the other side, and how you can like create situations where you can like escape things and not be able to get caught, and all these whatever. So I don't know if that's it's still going to be the game that is going to reward the person who, like, I guess you could argue any GW game is like this. If you play a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, like, we'll just compare, like, like even old fantasy battles against 40K was like this, where, like, yeah, of course, like, playing more 40K is going to make you better, but it's to a point, right, where, really 40K has always kind of been just a target priority game, more or less, right? It's like, can you pick the right targets and shoot them? Do you have the weapons to do that? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing, whereas fantasy battles, it really is like a lawyer's game in a lot of ways.
It is. It feels like it.
If you're well studied and you knew how to like line up your regiment in the right angle and these sorts of things, because you're worried about how things flee and move through you, and how your fleeing units are going to move, and all these angles and stuff like that. People like that part of it for sure.
Yeah,
and that's part of the appeal.
That's 100%.
Geometry wars or whatever.
The geometry wars is the thing. Yeah, and I think that's fine if you like that sort of game.
But do you feel like, I know you've only played one game, do you feel like is that even true about this edition?
So
does it have that?
So this is where my Horus Heresy comparison, like, I can ad nauseum continue bringing it up, because when HH 2.0 came, and Chris and I and our like close group of friends, we love the setting. We played 1.0 a bunch. played 2.0, and it is super fun. But within, like, I remember like 8 of us, all with their books out, and we're all just like, oh, this does this, and this works like this, and we're like digesting, the rule set. And very quickly you got to that thing. You're like, oh, there's a few centerpiece rules of the game that are just so good that it like kind of makes certain things, other parts of the game, kind of irrelevant. So in Horus Heresy, it's rules like brutal, it's contemptors of any kind,
it's how they
Primarchs of any kind, certain combinations of Meltas and Terminators, and basically any multi-wound high save thing is just like, there's a tier list, it just becomes the best thing. Now, Horus Heresy, like, with that's why Horus Heresy events often are actually different points levels at different games. The scenarios matter a lot because they're like, if you just say pitch battle, the armies are going to look identical. They're just going to be blobs of Terminators with Primarchs in Spartans,
Leviathans,
and the armies are just going to do this every time. Yeah. And I see parallels in Old World. So I think it is a game that benefits a lot from a bit of social contract. I think again. I'm sure, again, lots of people are going to be like, nope, the game's amazing, I love it. And that's great, continue playing it. But, I've followed it a little bit. I've seen some tournament coverages, and I see a lot of the same thing. It's like specialized cab buses or monster cav things or dragons or combinations of all of those things. And it becomes kind of like, who can kill their other thing first? I think you ask anyone.
Which ironically is like those things basically ignore the geometry part of the game.
They do
to an extent.
They do,
right?
actually.
Like they kind of do, right?
They
like,
do.
So.
They kind of are able to not adhere to those things.
It's like you're in the second dimension and I'm in the third.
They
dimension.
really did, yeah. So I'll get into the game a little bit, and again, So I scored 0 points, so I'm happy to admit that.
Impressive for a chaos army.
I know, and a bit of that is probably my. I'm sure it's half to do with my list, half to do with my first game, and half to do with not expecting, not knowing what to expect. And Brandon, who is a great guy, he just he usually does scoot towards powerful armies, and I was fine with that. I'm happy to get rinsed to learn things, but he was very obviously playing. He got to play Age of Sigmar inside of Warhammer Fantasy, And again, this is, I know not every army has 360 charging Peg Knights with heroes in them. But some armies have some equivalents, and I've quickly realized that even in my Chaos army, I can build something very similar. But I was not ready for that, and I was like, and we talked about it ad nauseum afterwards, and we're like, there's not really much I could do. I would have to probably position my units a very specific way. And I guess a bit of my spiel again is again, I'm happy to admit that I'm a terrible player, bad lists, didn't study enough. Yeah. And I think that's where I'm getting to this in this discussion, is that like, and if that's the game, that's the game. But I think that's going to ultimately hold it back, because it just does not have the like break out of the box and play, and it's fine. You can't do that,
and it never did.
It never did.
It never did.
It never
it
did.
Yeah.
It never did.
And ultimately, this is why I think it's so much healthier for Old World to be like almost like a specialist game now, because like quite frankly, let's be real, they are appealing to a smaller group of people that want that type of experience. It's not an easy game to get into. It's not an easy game to master, and I guess that is the draw for a lot of people. And I think it's, like I said, I think it's in a healthy place now, because it's not the expectations aren't for it to be Age of Sigmar.
Exactly.
Right? It doesn't have to be the big boy beside 40k, right?
But I'm also happy to talk about some positives. There's some parts of the game that I think are great, actually. How'd
you find the new magic? Because obviously it's a massive change.
No, it is a massive change if the last game you played was Aethed or something.
Yes.
But if you played other like any AOS, games, 40k, blah blah blah, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. It's actually, I think I would not be surprised if Age of Sigmar borrows this magic concept in some future edition, because having certain spells trigger at different phases was great. It's like a little bit more to memorize, but once you there's like a few keywords. There's like the enchantments, hexes, magic missiles, vortexes, blah blah blah. Like they just trigger at different turns, and you just you have you can only cast so many a turn, obviously, but you just roll your 2 dice. I find adding the wizard level is jokingly kind of irrelevant right now, because if you're both packing a level 4, it doesn't matter. It's basically what you roll and what your opponent rolls.
Right. So you just cancel the levels out.
Essentially. So I actually had no problem with that. I thought that was very clean. It's very powerful, obviously. The spells are still... they're not so much... you're not wiping units out with a spell. There's no like Dwellers Below thing necessarily, but they are buffing units very strongly. So if most models on the table only roll 1 dice to attack, and they've got an extra attack all of a sudden, or pip of toughness, it obviously scales.
I've always thought that was funny, and obviously they've removed a lot of the direct damage stuff because like it feels bad, quote unquote, or whatever, for players. But it is kind of funny though that like in terms of just like sheer impact, like it's basically the same thing. Like right, if you can mega buff a unit, that's not really that different than just like Dwellersing something or it's just like more. It's more steps, right?
It is more steps.
It's just more steps.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. The thing with like, I remember the one thing about 8th, that's why I always will be fond of 8th, is there seemingly was the rock paper scissors between the unit types was not as straightforward. Like it wasn't like infantry was just garbage, or that monster cav was the only thing. Like there was like quite a diversity in the. Like a big brick of infantry just never broke things like that. Whereas now if you use the right combination of a unit hits it, it will just blow it away.
That's one of the trade-offs of like massively reducing the amount of dice that are being rolled. Right. This is what was going to happen.
Yeah. So I like the magic. The movement still felt good. The combats were fine. I didn't really mind. I know. We joke there's like a lot less dice being rolled. It's not really a problem. It's just kind of. You're still kind of adding the combat res and just trying to go from there. I don't know. The game felt very classic. It does have that. I mean, it has interesting things with there's a lot more different unit types. That's a big thing in the game. I know that was a big part of 7th. Like something I like literally just before the game was like, I was like, oh, these Chaos Warriors are heavy infantry, and I was like, they only need 4 to a rank instead of 5, and all these like little, and they can't be like. And because they're so elite, you need like unit strength of 10 to flank to get a disruption on the flank and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like like all these little. But again, if you get hit by certain power units, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's cool as long as you're fighting infantry and it's all.
Yeah, and again, it's about mitigating certain things and putting chafe and blockers and. Still good. It's still classic Warhammer. I'm gonna play again, and I'm gonna try and rise to the occasion with my own grime unit. And I guess I was naive to be like, oh, just push some blocks. I think Brandon and I agreed that after we test out this like my own version of the Death Star, that we'll then maybe just like shift into like some restrictions on ourselves. Just like when we played Warriors Heresy a lot, we started doing like restricting some units for just to promote diversity in list building and to promote. New game outcomes that wasn't just like this dice off. And I mean, I'm not likely to play many tournaments or leagues, so yeah, that's perfect for me.
No, that's a really healthy way to be. I think.
And I'm still excited to like add, convert some more models and add some more things. I need more dogs actually, so this project will continue to grow a little bit. I'm not done. Like I'm gonna add some chariots and bits and bobs. So
kind of a fun way to run a league too, right? Where you just maybe like for one league you say, oh, okay, we're not going to do any monsters or
Well, I saw in the store Discord, the store Discord had I think it was at the start of the second league or some. I don't know. It was like midway through the year. They were talking about like a non-behemoth format or something. They were already. The only slight problem there potentially is there is like, as we know with community-driven comps, is you like cut X and that Y descends to the best.
As long as everyone's okay with that.
Yeah. So there it is. So I'm sure hundreds of comments of just why are you guys even talking about this? And I'm sure
I don't know. I think it was very reasonable.
Was that reasonable?
I think so.
Was that reasonable? I try not to be too harsh or whatever.
No, I mean, like, it's. I mean, I don't know why I would be mad. You gave the game a really good chance. Like, you built an army for it. You're playing it. And you're saying you're gonna keep playing it. Like, I don't know what. What more
it's not. I put it this way for those of you that maybe know me a long time, or their customers have like known me from like years ago, from my Games Workshop days when I played so much of the game. It's not replacing AOS, that's for sure. It's just not. I don't see it happening.
Well, now,
at least for me personally.
Now you've done it.
Now, we're at 20 minutes.
I had to tell you that you actually were pretty good, and then you had to throw it all the way at the end.
It's not replacing it. Well, at least not for me. In terms of like where my energy will focus in terms of like games going forward. Like it's very much a side project, I didn't give me enough to be like, I'm gonna convert to just this or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a therapeutic thing because it reminded me that I have moved on. Like mentally.
Right.
Like it just didn't like. Yeah, I was like, okay, this was fine. It was fun. I think I enjoyed the army project more than the game.
I mean, that's not surprising.
Yeah. And I think I enjoy. I think also when you play a game of AOS, there's actually a lot going. The board state is much harder to solve, I guess. Whereas like, which is like quite a mental puzzle. Whereas like in the old world, it's very like you can identify very quickly. This has to be dealt with, otherwise the game is over. Like it's very so that was in this game was like trying to like, in this particular game, I quickly like Brandon had like this a bus of knights, and I was like, well, the bus of knights has to be like chasing some dogs or cav for a little while because I can't deal with that and the Peg Death Star, so I've got to decide. I got to figure out how to deal with those. And I couldn't. so
yeah, turns out it didn't matter.
No, it's my fault for not packing enough dragon blades and
of course,
or whatever they're called, dragon slayers, ogre blades, and enough magic reds and all these things.
Well, we had 19 and a half minutes of good video there, and
Well, I thought people only watched.
You got to give people some good
minutes.
Garbage time. Anyways, right? So
yeah.
Well, hope you guys liked this video. If you want to hear more about Jay's
Old World Adventure,
let us know in the comments, and we'll do some touch bases with these. I still haven't gotten the bug yet. No, there hasn't been an army that's come out that I've wanted to do yet, so I'm waiting. I have the vaccine. Oh man, I'm not going to touch that. Check us out on Patreon. Like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Until next time, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.